Welcome to Parent Traditio. This is our second Parent Traditio of the school year. My name is James Cowart. I'm delighted to have each of you here. For those who are not familiar with Parent Traditio, that's what we call our parent education program here at Trinitas. Traditio is the Latin word which means tradition. We are welcoming you into quite a tradition, and we are learning and growing in that tradition day by day here as classical Christian school parents, teachers, and administrators. So we're delighted to have you here this evening. We have a special guest with us tonight. I'm going to take a moment to introduce her to you. Miss Mandi Gerth is a teacher and a classical education consultant. She hails from Dallas, Texas, where she lives with her husband and 3 of their 5 children, 2 of whom are here with her this weekend, enjoying our world's most beautiful beaches here in Pensacola. She currently serves as Administrative Director of the Cowan Center at the University of Dallas, and she holds a Master of Humanities degree from that institution with a concentration in classical education. Now, that being said, this is her most recent book, and it's titled Thoroughness and Charm. This book is one that our faculty are reading together this fall. Dr. Hadley put us onto this book through his relationship with our speaker tonight. And so we thought, well, what better way to experience the book than to have the author come and speak with us? And so we do have a number of these left over from the case or 2 that we bought that are available for you tonight if you would like to purchase them after the event tonight as well. In this book, she provides a definitive guide to the classroom liturgy and offers practical advice to the classical educators, our teachers here, who are seeking a truly Christ-centered classical classroom while reminding our teachers of their high calling. Now, what we're here to do tonight is to invite you into that same pursuit as parents. We're looking to align your home and the classroom together in this one beautiful vision. So here to speak to us tonight, again, is Miss Mandi Gerth. Please come ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me. We did go to the beach today, and Dr. Hadley pointed out that if we were in the water, that proved to everybody that we don't really live here. We were, in fact, in the water, and we had a lovely afternoon. I would like to begin with a poem, and then I'm going to pray for us. This poem is written by George MacDonald. It is called That Holy Thing. They all were looking for a king to slay their foes and lift them high. Thou camest, a little baby thing that made a woman cry. O Son of Man, to right my lot, naught but thy presence can avail. Yet on the road thy wheels are not, nor on the sea thy sail. My how or when thou wilt not heed, but come down thine own secret stair, that thou mayest answer all my need, yea, every bygone prayer. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we confess that we do have a great, great need of you, and that often when we need you most, we don't see you. We don't see your wheels on the road or your sail on the sea. But instead, Lord, you always come. You always come down your own secret stair, and you always answer all of our prayers. We thank you for being so faithful to us. And we pray that tonight we would hear what you want us to hear about how our homes need to reflect your glory and point our children towards your kingdom. We confess that it is often more overwhelming than we care to admit, this work that we're undertaking. So we desperately need your help, and we are so thankful that you are a faithful God who promises to answer all of our prayers according to your will for us and for our children. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. In Thoroughness and Charm, I talk about I talk about what the school is doing in terms of enculturation, or what its aims are. And I'm going to read you a short passage from the book, and then we're going to talk a little bit about that. In the classical tradition, we unashamedly pass on values. different values than other educational methods and programs. But for a long time, some classical schools thought that they were classical if they read the right books and gave hard tests. Those practices certainly shape students, but that's not what makes a school classical. A school is classical because of the way it models how to live and how to look at the world. This sort of education is caught more than taught, meaning it requires more than the right books and teachers with advanced degrees. How to see the world truthfully and what to do about that truth does not come to students via assessments or book lists. Instead, it is embodied by adults in authority. Our intangible attitudes and affections create classroom culture. They are the means by which we pass on to our students the things worth believing and worthy of love. Teachers need to learn how to live and how to look at the world rightly for both ourselves and our students. Students learn from what teachers say, but more so from how we dress, why we laugh, and what we love. So if this is what your school is undertaking by the way that it trains its teachers and which teachers it hires and how it trains them to teach the curriculum, the question I want to pose to us tonight is, what are we doing at home to support that? How are you actively invested in that sort of mission? We moved from Wisconsin to Dallas, Texas in 2014, largely because we wanted to give our children a classical education. At that point in the movement, your options for a classical school were either to homeschool, well, I should say, like in our neck of the woods, these were our options. I'm sure there were other options in other areas or other cities, but we were living in a suburb of Milwaukee, and the two classical options we had were to put them into a college prep private school that was non-religious or to homeschool. Those were our only options. My husband, who grew up through the Missouri Synod Lutheran school system, was very adamant that our kids receive a parochial education. I grew up in the public school system, so it didn't seem to me too out of the realm of possibility that we would send them to the college prep school, except that the price tag was beyond what we could do for 5 children. So when we had outgrown our little house, I said to my husband, it's just as much work to pack up an entire house and move across the city as it is to pack up an entire house and move across the country. And he was brave enough to do that with me. So we sold our house and we packed everybody up and we moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And we toured schools and we tried to find a classical school that was going to fit us best. And we toured one that was Charlotte Mason influenced. It had chicken coops on campus and organic herb gardens. And I was like, honey, this is it. And he took one look at the price tag and he said, ×5, Mandi, ×5. So we had to choose a school that could scale, right? That could scale to meet the needs of our family. So we ended up choosing a collaborative model school because the price tag was less because I was going to do half of the work. Now, they were in a 5-day Lutheran school prior to them coming to Dallas. And so I wasn't really sure how that collaborative situation was going to work. But I dove in and I started reading all the books and started to learn what it really meant to pour myself out in service to my children's education. And we were a few months into the collaborative model situation. And I was just so frustrated and I was just at my wit's end. And it suddenly occurred to me that I needed to start operating as if I was a homeschool parent. I needed to read all of their blogs and go to all of their conferences and discover all of their secrets. And so I started doing that. I started going to the Great Homeschool Convention, and I started going to any seminar that anybody from the Circe Institute was putting on. And I started to learn how to be a classical educator. And I started to learn what it looked like for our family culture to morph and to I guess just really develop into what it was supposed to be. Now, one of the hesitations I have about giving a talk like this is that my family is not perfectly classical. I am not perfectly classical. No one is perfectly classical. My heart behind what I want to share with you tonight is that I've been on both sides. I've been the mom who's been frustrated about the curriculum that's been asked of me to teach, and I've been the teacher who gets the angry emails from the parents who are mad about the curriculum that they have to teach. So I've been on both sides, and I understand how crucial it is that our families are working with our teachers and our administration, and how when that relationship is one of trust and friendship, the children flourish and grow, and the parents feel as though they've made a wise investment, and that they are here to support the school and its mission. So my time in that collaborative model really helped me to see that education is a formula. It's a 3-part formula. If we want a whole child who is liberally educated, which means they become a whole person at the end who is not enslaved to their desires, to themselves or their desires, there are three people that need to be working towards that goal, or 3 institutions: the family, the church, and the school. Now, family has a culture, just like school has a culture, and just like your church has a culture. We all have a way of looking at reality, a way of embodying that truth, and a way of passing on the values to the children, to the students. All 3 have to be working together. So I've always thought that it was easiest to discover what a family valued or what its culture was by how they spent their time and how they spent their money. So I would look at other families, sometimes comparing ours to theirs, which is natural, just sort of wondering, like, how do they spend their time? How do they spend their money? What kind of people are they getting for that investment? And is that wise? Is there something for me to learn there? When we had our firstborn, we lived in Milwaukee in our first house, and I was thinking through what it meant to raise a human being. And I went out on a walk with my infant and pushed the stroller block after block. And I came home from that walk very, very convicted of how important our choices as mom and dad, husband and wife, were going to be as far as how that child came into its own being. And I'm pretty sure I called my husband and I was like, "What kind of children do you want?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" But that was one of the things that occurred to me. It was like, it's up to me. It's up to us. Do we want children who know how to round kick? Like, are we putting them in Taekwondo lessons? Are we going to be the family that skis? Like, do I need to start thinking about like buying snowsuits and like what, or swimming? Do we want to put them in? Do we want to spend Saturdays in a natatorium watching swim meets all day? Like, what do we want? What do we want to do? What kind of exposure do we want to give them to what things? And that was on us. And so that was the beginning for me of understanding what it meant to create a family culture. And at the end of that conversation, not that one, because it just started multiple conversations that my husband and I had over the course of raising our children, but what we sort of landed on was that we wanted students who were well educated. We wanted them to have a good liberal arts education, and we wanted them to play one sport, and we wanted them to play one instrument. We thought music, physical activity, education. That seemed to be a good place to start. And that's just what we committed to doing. Not everybody still plays an instrument. Not everybody still plays a sport. But the idea was that we wanted them to have habits through things that we were exposing them to and asking them or committing them to. Okay, so when you're thinking about your family culture, this is another really helpful sort of tension point. And it pops up frequently. As soon as you have more than one child doing more than one thing, this will happen. There will be some sort of conflict. Like the piano recital will be on the same day as the volleyball tournament. And the two of you have to look at each other and say, like, which one is it going to be? Which one are we saying yes to and which one are we saying no to? Or you'll only have $1,000 to spend on something. And it's like, well, which one can we afford? Are we doing this or are we doing this? So when those tension points come, those are excellent opportunities for you to evaluate your family culture. We have to make a choice. There's an opportunity cost presenting itself to us. We can't say yes to both. We have to say no to something. Which one are we saying no to and why? And sometimes you fall into patterns and habits that you don't really even know you've fallen into. And you start to think, like, we've said no to church a lot recently. Or we've said no to the grandparents a lot recently. And having those conversations or having those tension points pop up will help you reorient yourself according to what you actually want your culture to be, not necessarily what you've drifted into. So when you have your children and you start making all of these decisions about who you want them to be, there will be lots of things that you can say yes to, but there are also lots of things that you need to say no to. You can say yes to swim lessons, you can say yes to skiing, you can say yes to taekwondo. What you do not want to do is to be building a family culture at home that is actively tearing down what your students are getting at school. You don't want to be unraveling or undoing what happened at school that day. And I don't think we don't intentionally do that, right? Like we don't get in the car and say, like, tell me everything that she said to you about Jane Eyre, and I'm going to tell you everything that everything was wrong, right? We don't have those adversarial kind of conversations with our students, trying to actively undo things. I'm talking more about things like, I was going through Carline for one of the very first times in my life, because I've always taught at the school where the kids go. So it was like they come find me and we all go home long after Carline is over. And I was waiting in Carline and I was like, this is not fun. Carline is just really long and not fun. And in the Texas heat, I actually have to get there early enough, and I have to put my sun shield up because I'm waiting for half an hour in the 95 to 100 degree heat in Carline. Carline is not fun. But what I was noticing was that students were walking. They had gotten past to walk home. They were just walking to like the end of the block, and their parents were picking them up at the end of the block to avoid Carline. That's what I'm talking about. Because basically what you've done is all day long, the student has been told that they need to wait in line, they need to wait their turn, they need to practice self-denial. And the mom's like, I'm not waiting in Carline, you're meeting me over there. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's those sorts of things where we're like slowly and in small ways undoing the virtue that your school is trying to produce in your students. Okay, so why is it so important that we have culture? Like, why is enculturation so important to the educational task? It has to do with that idea that I said about how things are caught rather than taught. There's just an exposure, there's an atmosphere, and there's an environment that you create at home. In one of the books that most classical schools ask their faculty to read at some point, it's called Norms and Nobility. It's by somebody named David Hicks, and it is a challenging read. And the first time that I read it, my curriculum director at the time said, it's gonna be tough. And he was like trying to, like warn me off of it or whatever. But I sat in a coffee shop and I just read page by page and underlined and underlined and underlined and underlined. What I love about that book, there's a lot of things I love about that book, but one of the main things I love about that book is that the title so accurately reflects what we're trying to do as far as enculturation. What he means by norms is that there's a normative way of looking at the world and acting that we're trying to produce in our children. We want them to see that certain things are just the way they're supposed to be. Certain things are just normal. And then we want them to aspire to something that transcends. We want them to desire to reach beyond themselves to something truly noble. We want them to understand that this world is not all there is. That the things here map to a transcendent reality that transforms us. So to me, the norms of nobility is just a gorgeous way of helping us understand that. And I know that we see that our culture is in trouble because we all know that things are just not the way that they should be. Recently, I don't know if I was rereading it for a class that I teach, but I kept talking about norms. And my husband was sort of getting annoyed with me constantly talking about norms and norms and norms. But eventually we were somewhere and there was like a child who was throwing a fit in the grocery line or whatever. And he's like, norms. I'm like, see? Like they're just certain things that we should help our children understand. This is normal. This is not normal. It is not normal to throw yourself on the floor in the grocery line because you can't get bubble gum. I mean, it is normal to throw a fit when you don't get your way, but it quickly gets resolved, right? I guess the thing that's not normal is the fact that everybody pretends that that's normal and we can let that go on as long as we want, right? So that's the idea of there are norms, right? There are normative things that we want our children to see and know how to do and behave and what to do about them. Okay, so norms and nobility is kind of what we're after, even in families. I think that in terms of values, or maybe the things that shape those normative behaviors, we have like 5 big things we need to do. We need to have families that value fellowship, service, resilience, attentiveness, and discipline. To have these sorts of children, we have to build and maintain fences. We have to be good at saying no. To create this family culture requires a whole lot more of saying no to things than saying yes to things. So I'm going to say them again. So I said fellowship, service, resilience, attentiveness, and discipline. I was recently in California talking to collaborative model parents, and I think there was one dad there because it was the middle of the day. And a sweet young mom raised her hand and she said, do you have any advice on how to manage 4 kids who all play one sport and one instrument? I'm like, because it's just hard. It's just hard. She said things just keep, like we can go days without having a family dinner, and it creeps into the weekend. And I understand that firsthand. So what I told her, and what I think is really the best way of answering this, the ethos of the home needs to be that everybody wants to be there. That we're not trying to escape home to do all of these things. Like we're not signing our kids up for all of these activities because we want to get them out of the house. We're supposed to be turned toward the house, turned towards home. And in order for that to be true, mom has to want to be there too. And I shared with her the story that my oldest, he still is. He's teaching at a classical school in New Hampshire with his wife. He teaches 8th grade literature and 7th grade Latin. She teaches 7th grade literature and 8th grade art or something. I think they're just like flopped like that. But when he was in high school, his primary focus was jazz music and school. He was very competitive about school. And then his senior year, he decided to play football. I remember turning to his brother, who's our athlete, and he's the one that actually plays baseball for a job. I remember turning to his brother and saying, "Is Owen going to be okay?" Because it's the first time he played a sport, and he chose football in Texas. But so you could question whether or not he really was all that intelligent. But anyways, I hope he never hears me say that. I want to be him when I grow up. So he decided to play football his senior year, and that time that they spent in the car, they're 18 months apart, Owen and Sam, and that time that they spent in the car transformed their relationship. They were in the car driving to 6 a.m. workouts all summer long. They were coming home from practice talking about why they had to run extra laps because one of their teammates refused to wear his appropriate uniform bottoms. So the whole team had to run while he stood there watching them. Their football coach was ex-military, if you haven't figured that out yet. So they talked all the way up and they talked all the way home. And then one evening they were coming home from football practice and they said, "I'm starving. Are you starving?" "Yeah, I'm starving." "Should we stop and get something?" "No, Mom will have something if we just go home." That's not a given, right? That's not a given for most families. Most families, if everybody is busy and everybody's trying to get out of the house, there's nobody in the house making sure that there is something there for hungry boys who come home from football practice. So in order for us to have that kind of ethos, there needs to be this understanding that home is where we want to be and that our kids want to be there with us. So let's keep that tucked away, right? So we're trying to raise children that have these sorts of 5 values, but that's only going to happen when we've got this ethos running underneath that says we all want to be here and we're all committed to caring for each other. Okay. I think at the end of the day, we all want to raise children who will come home to us when they don't have to. And in order to get those sorts of children, we have to be willing to pour ourselves out for them over and over and over and over again. What I really want, and what I'm starting to see, is I want children who will come home for Christmas. And I want children who, when they think about having their first baby, think that it might be smart to move a little bit closer to Dallas. That's what I want. Okay, let's talk about those 5 things. I have lots of other little vignettes I could share with you, but I want to be mindful of where we're at. Okay. There was a point in my collaborative model life where I really did not feel very joyful about educating our kids. I didn't feel as though I had the resources, I had the desire. I felt very stressed and empty. And then the Lord gave me this verse. For the Lord comforts Zion. He comforts all her waste places. and makes her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. That verse was a gift straight from God, because what I needed to have joy and gladness found in me, and I needed thanksgiving and the voice of song to be the soundtrack that was playing at home. And I knew that in my soul there was more desert and waste place and wilderness than there was Eden. So when we can give thanks for the work that we get to do in raising these children and partnering with your school, it starts to transform your home. Your home starts to look a little bit more like a garden where there's joy and gladness and thanksgiving. Okay, so the first thing I talked about was fellowship. And what I mean by that, and why this was so important to our family, was with everybody home, doing a home day component, we had to learn how to get along. We had to learn how to get along. And one of the secrets I realized to that was helping my children realize that they were not the most important person in the family. And that can be a real temptation. So when you've got a senior who's studying for the ACTs and he's also working a job, he can start to think like, I do not have time to do the dishes. Ask her to do the dishes. He suddenly said that I'm the most important person in the family right now because I have these deadlines and you don't. Now, the flip side of that is that his sister could say, I know you're studying and I know you have to work I know you have to work at 5. I will do the dishes. You go. There's that flip side, right? But that's fellowship, right? That's what a family in fellowship looks like. The second thing I think is important about maintaining fellowship as a family is that it's important to go through growth spurts together. And I got that phrase from Rachel Jankovic's, one of her books, either Loving the Little Years or Fit to Burst. But the idea that like we go through growth spurts together. So if somebody starts becoming a jazz musician, we all start learning how to listen to jazz. We go through growth spurt. My daughter plays volleyball. My husband just helped 3 boys go through high school sports. He doesn't know anything about volleyball, but he's learning. He's going through a growth spurt. He's learning how to line judge. He's much better at line judging than I am. So the idea, like, we need to maintain fellowship. We need to strive for fellowship with one another. Another way we do this is by having family meals and encouraging one another to listen, encouraging each other to have conversation. There was a point in our family conversations around the dinner table where my youngest just started to get frustrated because she never got a chance to talk. She's like, you never give me a chance to talk. And her brothers would say, jump in, sister, jump in. Like, you have to just get in here. Like, we're all talking, get in here. And that was their way of trying to say, like, we want you, and we want you at the big kids table. You can do it. Like, come on, let's do it. And then the last thing that I think is really important about maintaining fellowship is learning how to say you're sorry. Learning how to repent. And this begins with mom and dad modeling what it looks like to ask their children for forgiveness. For dad, modeling what it looks like to ask mom for forgiveness, and the other way around. Because we're going to have to do that. And it's very, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to repent of sin and to ask somebody to forgive you. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. It needs to be learned and it needs to be modeled. Okay, so fellowship. We want to strive for families that are in fellowship. Having this kind of family that maintains fellowship will help you learn how to be in fellowship with your teachers too, and how to extend forgiveness to them when they've done something that they know they need to apologize for. And for you being able to apologize for sending an email that you probably should have thought twice about, right? So maintaining fellowship transfers to the school as well. And it teaches the students how to be in fellowship with their classmates. Okay, second, service. We want students or children who are characterized by service, servitude, have servants' hearts, right? The school that I taught at said that we're training ethical servant leaders, right? So this will show up lots of places in classical schools. But it has to be embodied by the adults in authority. And it is most surely embodied by the teachers here. Their very act of signing their contract was an act of service. How are we as parents modeling service? Be the last family to leave the assembly or the football game because you're picking up the trash. Be the last family to leave the basketball game because you're helping roll up the gym floor covering so that it doesn't get scratched. Be the dad that volunteers to run car line when it's 100 degrees out so that somebody doesn't have to. Like, just find ways to serve. Just show up and serve. Teach your children how to do chores. Make Saturday about chores. So this is a habit that our family just started. And it had a lot to do with, again, scalability, right? If I have 5 children, we're always going to have chores to do. So Saturday morning always started with chores. And then it became what we were able to do next. Now, during baseball season, Saturday mornings were always filled with baseball. But the people who weren't playing baseball or going to baseball were at home doing the chores. But children who are used to doing chores they turn into the kids that will help clean up in the classroom or stay late to help pick up the trash. I think at one point, one of the teachers of our school came to me and said something about made a comment about how my children were always around doing things at school. And I said, when you're part of a big family, there's always more work to do. So sometimes that's kind of one of those crazy side benefits of having a lot of kids, is that lots of kids are used to just the fact that there's always more to do. Somebody's always coming home with groceries. Somebody's laundry always needs to be flipped. Like, there's just always something more to do. I also think it's important that you expect your children to help you cook dinner and help you clean up dinner. Encourage them to stay late at the table with you talking, but then when it's time to clean up, everybody's cleaning up. Everybody's cleaning up together. Show them what it looks like to serve. Make it normal to serve and not expect to be served. And another sort of side ancillary way that we can do this is we can model for them generosity towards people that are paid to serve us. So the way that we treat the baristas or the people in the drive-through line models service, right? I put this vignette out on Substack recently, but I was literally in a Starbucks grabbing a moment quick to kind of work on a talk or write something. And I walked in and I waited in line, and this sweet 20-year-old, she was sort of acting like the shift manager, or she could have been the manager on duty. She just looked a little too young to be the manager on duty, but she was clearly in charge of the shift. She looks me in the eye and she says, "Our computers just went down. I'll comp your coffee. What do you want?" And I told her, and then I went and sat down. Well, the line behind me was 6 people long. She couldn't comp everybody's coffee. So she tried to explain very politely to the woman who was next in line behind me that she couldn't take her order. And she's like, "What do you mean you can't take my order?" She's like, "I can't take your order. The computer system is down." She's like, "But I have to be somewhere." I'm like, "Sister, we've all got to be somewhere. We've all got to be somewhere." So she just was very belittling and berating to this poor 20-year-old who could not solve the problem for her. It's not as if she had some sort of secret button that she was just refusing to push. The entire network had gone down, and she could do nothing. Behind behind this woman was another woman. And she said, well, is the mobile app working? And the barista said, yes. And so this other woman said, well, I'll place our orders for us. What would you like? And it was like this woman was completely transformed, that somebody had taken a minute to basically to serve her, right? Or to care for her, or to be human. There's a way in which we just shouldn't model that to our kids. We shouldn't model this, like when there's a problem and the person who's supposed to serve you is clearly experiencing a difficulty. We shouldn't model some sort of like, I wish you could do something about it attitude. They want to. They would like to, and our attitude makes it much better or much worse for everybody in the room. But that's modeling to somebody that even though it is your job to serve me, I don't think you're less than me, right? So that goes back to the idea that we want our children to be comfortable with serving others. We also want them to understand how important it is to maintain fellowship with other people. Okay, fellowship, service, resilience. Do not give your children a ripcord when things get hard. Do not assume that they are right and that the teachers and the administrators are wrong. Help them build resilience by suffering through things that are unfair. And sports are a great place to do this. And my husband is an excellent role model to my children on this. Sam is a pitcher. And I have gone to more baseball games than I can count where the strike zone was wildly unfair. And Sam would get in the car and he would say to his dad, that umpire. And my husband would say to Sam, you needed to adjust. That helps your baseball player build resilience. What doesn't help him build resilience is saying, you're right, the umpire was completely unfair. That doesn't help him build resilience. That helps him feel entitled. Sports are a great place to help our children build resilience. One of my other sons plays basketball, and he will sometimes get in the car and he will complain about how he kept getting called for this foul, but the other team didn't get called for the foul. And how in the huddle, the coach would basically sort of communicate like, it's not our fault. The umpire's against us. And my husband would get furious about that. Because again, it doesn't help. It doesn't help our children if we continue to give them this idea that when the cards are stacked against them, it's the card's fault. The cards will be stacked against them. That is how life works. And they need to learn how to adjust and how to pivot and how to persevere. And giving them a ripcord, which basically means like, you're right, it's not your fault, continues to give them that mentality that the problem is out there and there's nothing I can do. And it wasn't me. Right? Okay. I have one other crazy story to tell you. When my kids were little, well, the boys, right? So I had 3 boys and then 2 girls. When my boys were like 12, 13, they wanted to start earning money so that they could spend money on stuff that they wanted. In the suburbs of Dallas, everybody hires professionals to do everything. There's professional dog sitters and professional dog walkers, and there's professional people to come and cut your grass, and there's no snow to plow, like no snow to shovel. Like all the things that we did when we were younger to earn cash, like everybody's got a business for that now. So I heard from another mom that her kids washed trash bins, like the rolling trash bins. And I'm like, tell me more. So we created a trash bin cleaning business. And my kids did it for like 5 years. And they earned cash. We cleaned maggoty ground beef off the bottom of trash cans on a regular basis. or diapers that were stuck to the bottom of trash cans for cash, for money, in the 100-degree Dallas heat. But now they know to work hard for something, and then when the cash is yours, you get to spend it. Like my girls would join the boys doing the trash can business, and they got to do the easier part because they were younger and female. So they would like dry the trash cans with the rags. But then like they took $150 in cash and went to the American Girl doll store and bought their dolls. Like what a feeling. What a feeling. What a feeling. So we can do things like that to help our kids build resilience, right? Okay. Next, fellowship, service, resilience. Okay, attentiveness. Okay, Charlotte Mason says that attentiveness is a habit that can be built. It's something that we are trained to be able to do. And I don't think that it's a secret to you that our phones are killing our ability to attend. So you have to build fences around their screens. You just have to. And it will be painful. So our family is going through a bit of this pain right now because our youngest has a completely different iPhone experience than our oldest did. Because the whole technology, the whole platform, the whole thing has changed. It is the wild, wild west on steroids. It's a completely different ballgame from when my son first got his phone in, I don't know, 2018 to what it is now. I mean, it's a whole different thing. So it's going to be painful, and you're going to have to be attentive. A colleague of mine posted to LinkedIn his 9 rules for cell phone usage. And the one of them, there are a couple that stuck out to me as particularly beautiful. And one of them was, well, I'm going to give you a few. That he recommends you put a basket somewhere in the central place of the house where they all live. They don't get to go to their bedrooms with the cell phones. And the cell phones live in that basket during family times. So if it's family movie time, the phones are in the basket. If it's family meal time, phones are in the basket. I think that's a great idea. They just have a sneaky way of like wandering away. Like you don't really know who's got their phone where. So having just a physical central location where that's where they're going to live is super helpful. I think that's a great idea. Another thing he said is that he encourages us to ask our children to text incomplete words and sentences. And I didn't really think this was a big deal because, again, of the way that things have changed, right? So my first 3 boys, when they text me, it is all complete sentences, complete words. And that's how I text. I even go back and like capitalize and put the right grammar in, like I put all the right punctuation in. I pretty much text like I'm writing you a letter. And then my daughters started texting me, KK. What does KK mean? Like, so they started picking up all of these little shortcuts. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have to introduce this rule. Whereas the first 3, it wasn't a thing. Like, it wasn't a thing then. People weren't texting like that then. They are now. And I have to ask all the time, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? So I think that one's great too. Asking them to text incomplete words and complete sentences, having a central place for all of the phones to be, and then making sure that they know that you're going to read everything. And again, with my daughters, it's been a different ballgame. Like I didn't read everything that the boys texted. It was a different situation. Now I have to read everything that the girls text and what they get on their phones. And just remind them that like a swear word is still a swear word, even if it's spelled creatively. Because they were getting that from some of their friends. And I was like, just reminding them of that. Okay. So we need to build the habit of attentiveness. And one of the ways in which we need to do that is we need to be vigilant about their phones, because their phones are just robbing them of their ability to attend. The other kind of attentiveness that I think is very important for us to build in our students is what I call the ability to decline no opportunity for usefulness. Okay, and I get this from a Valley of Vision prayer that I used to have my students recite. Let me find it for you. I think you'll enjoy it. It says, it's just an excerpt from one of the prayers, but the prayer I used to have my 4th and 5th graders recite with me was, "Let me not be at my own disposal, but rejoice that I'm under the care of one who is too wise to err, too kind to injure, too tender to crush. May I scandalize none by my temper and conduct, but recommend and endear Christ to all around, bestow good on everyone as circumstances permit, and decline no opportunity of usefulness." Isn't that pretty? It's beautiful. But that's a type of attending. You have to be aware of what's going on around you to be able to see that there's an opportunity to be useful. You have to be aware of what's going on around you. You have to be attentive to the circumstances and to the people around you. And that's a habit we need to cultivate in our kids. And one of the best ways that I have found to do this is making myself less available to do certain chores. So the older kids got really good at doing chores because I was always nursing a baby or changing a diaper. I was busy with other things. And then when I didn't have little babies, I tended to just jump in and do everything because I was there. The problem is that now I have 2 daughters who aren't as attentive as their brothers were because I'm around to do the things. So making sure that they know that that the dishes won't get done if they just stay there, right? I'm not going to do the dishes if you put them in the sink. And my Sam came home. He had shoulder surgery and he's home rehabbing with us, and he'll go back to Phoenix in the early spring. But my daughters were putting their dirty dishes in the sink without rinsing them out. And he literally said to them, he's like, hey, Nora, how about you rinse this dish off and put it in the dishwasher before you walk away? I was like, thank you. Like, that's great. Like, it's okay. It's okay for us to just say things like, hey, let's rinse that off and put that in the dishwasher. The other thing that I've encouraged my kids to do is just by asking the question, like, what else do you think could be done? Right? If you walk into the kitchen and you see about 6 or 7 things that need to be done in there, instead of ordering them to do them or doing them yourself, you could just say, what do you see in here that needs to be done before we can leave? Or before you can watch that show, what do you see in here that needs to be done? Because that will help them start paying attention. Okay. And I also think that in terms of chores, it's very important for you to follow an I do, we do, you do model when you teach them how to do chores. So the first time you teach them how to mop the floor, they should stand there and they should watch you mop it. And you should be telling them what you're doing the whole time. I'm going to pay attention to every corner. I'm going to wring the mop out at this point. I'm going to, I can only use this cleaner on the hardwood floor. Like, talk to them and tell them everything. And then the next time you do it together. So you do a little bit yourself. You do it a little bit. They do it a little bit. You remind them of some of the things that you told them the first time that they've forgotten. You ask them some questions to see if they were paying attention. You do it together. And then you let them do it. And you watch. And you point out the things that need to be done again or better. And you ask them to fix it. That's how you teach children chores. And it's also how your teachers are teaching your students new skills too. It's a very, very basic way of teaching something to someone. I do it and you're watching. We're going to do it together. And then you're going to do it and I'm going to observe. And I'm going to give you feedback. Okay. So we've got fellowship, service, resilience, attentiveness, and then finally we have discipline. No discipline is pleasant at the time, but painful, and yields a harvest of righteousness for those who are trained by it. Our homes exist to teach our children how laws and consequences work. We want children who will do what they should do, not what they can do. We want children who will do their duty to their fellow man, not exert power over him. And this goes back to David Hicks's Norms and Nobility. He talks about this a lot, how we're not educating students to exert power over others or over nature or over circumstances. We're educating students who will do what is right because they should. Okay, so how do we teach them discipline? We need to teach them how to take turns. We need to teach them that the one who wants to go first is going to be the one that gets to go last. Okay, so after people had called shotgun for a while, I got so tired of it. I'm like, nobody gets shotgun. I'm choosing who gets shotgun, right? Or if somebody kept calling shotgun, I'd be like, okay, the other person get, like, just ways in which you can sort of say, like, we're gonna flip this a little bit, so that we start realizing we need to take turns, and the person who assumes that they're going to be the first is going to take the last turn. This one's really hard for me because it's not efficient as a mom. But asking the child who has the least natural ability in a certain area to do that thing, rather than relying on the one who's strong because it's more efficient and easier on you, you need to be on guard about that. So I have some children who are really good at washing dishes, and so I'm like, you're going to do dishes, and then you're going to do laundry. And then you end up with children who only know how to do laundry and don't know how to do dishes. So you have to sometimes just force yourself to not necessarily assign chores towards their propensity or their natural ability. You do actually have to make sure that they know how to do all the things, which will mean there'll be more of the I do, we do, you do than you might be comfortable with, but that's important. Okay, and then think about ways that you can ask your children to give something up or go without something, so that self-denial is not a foreign concept. So recently I was trying to encourage our family to observe the liturgical calendar a little bit more closely. And so in the month of Advent, I said, what if we made it a priority for these few weeks to eat simpler meals, so that when it came time to celebrate Christmas, we really were all hungry for steak? And my kids were like, what? What does that mean? I'm like, well, what if we just kind of, had a simple rotation of like a few pasta dishes and a few soups? And they were like, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, are there ways in which we can just ask our students or our children to kind of like, let's give something up for a while. Let's give up a certain show. Let's give up a certain, certain food. Let's give up a certain activity. Let's give some things up for a while, so that self-denial is not a foreign concept, okay? And one of the ways actually that you can do this, which I don't think it seems obvious until you actually have to do it at home. Put a limit on how many shows they can watch, or how many minutes they can have on an iPad, or how many, when they can text their friends. Put what I said earlier about building fences and maintaining them, put some fences around those things, because that will also start to help them realize that they need to say no to themselves, or that something needs to end. It's amazing to me how many second graders and third graders will come to me and say, yeah, I was binge watching last night. You're in second grade. You're in second grade. Number one, how do you have a device all to yourself that you can binge watch where nobody else needs the device? And then secondly, how do you even know what that means? And then how many shows is binge watching to a second grader, right? So, but I think we forget to check in on them, right? They're doing their thing, or they're off somewhere, and we forget that 30 minutes have gone by and we're not really sure, have they been texting their friends that whole time? Maybe it's time for me to go check on them and pull that in. Put some limits around things, right? Where they're allowed to use their devices, how long they're allowed to use their devices, how many of something they're allowed to do, right? Even this is going to sound silly, but it probably isn't. Limiting how much they can eat of something, right? Instead of eating out of the bag, pour it into a bowl. And when the bowl is gone, they are done. Right? That seems so like shockingly simple, and yet that's not how we eat as Americans. So limits, right? Okay. Okay, finally, I think it's important that we need to demonstrate respect for those who are in charge. And we need to teach our children about authority, and that authority is not a bad word. That all institutions run on authority, that the universe is arranged by authority, that your family runs on authority. And this will help them when things go badly at a baseball game. The umpire is the authority. The head of school is the authority. The teacher is the authority. Your dad is the authority, and he said you're not allowed to go. Teach them how to respect authority. This includes learning how to email and speak to teachers in a way that's respectful. I used to have an assignment where I asked all of my 5th and 6th graders to just send me an email. And the number of emails that I got that were like, thank you for class. And they just sent it. I was like, let's try that again, right? And I sent it back and I said something like, I will be happy to, and I have a mom who still tells me this story because it was her daughter. I will be happy to reply to your email when it begins with a proper salutation and ends with a closing. And I just sent it back. And the mom was like, oh, like, it had to happen. It had to happen. Somebody had to tell her that you don't talk to adults like that. So it includes teaching them how to send emails to adults, how to look adults in the eye. And then this one is my favorite, and it's the last thing I'm going to share with you before I encourage you to in your work. Our pastor used to tell my boys, if you did it, admit it. And it's become just a catechism in our house. If you did it, admit it. Examine your actions. Are you to blame? Are you at fault? Should you have not done that thing that you did? Okay, well then you're culpable. You have something to apologize for. You need to go and admit it. And I'm going to share with you this story. The same pastor, if you did it, admit it. One of my daughters, I think she and a couple of her friends were goofing around in the bathroom of the church. And I think one of them, they tried to climb over the stall. And so I think my daughter stood on like the toilet paper dispenser to try and get over the stall. I told you we're not a perfectly classical family, right? Okay. And she broke it. And if you did it, admit it. She wrote a letter to her pastor apologizing for breaking the toilet paper dispenser in the bathroom and asking him if he would forgive her. And he showed me the letter. If you did it, admit it, and accept the consequences that come. It's also important that our children understand that there are consequences. There will be consequences, and that's our job to make things right, to get back into fellowship with the person that we have offended by making restitution, whatever that looks like. The reason why it's important for us to make sure that they understand authority and that they admit the things that they've done that are wrong is we do want children who understand that they are not the exception to the rule. So classical education is largely about self-denial, not self-expression. We don't want students who think, that's fine for all of them, but I'm going to do it this way. We want students who will say, yes, ma'am, happy to do that for you. Okay. Right now counts for eternity, and the choices you make really do matter. I know what it feels like to be bogged down with all of the things that need to be done, to have lots of people that you're in charge of, to have lots of things going on in your house, and to think like there's just too much and it doesn't really matter. And I would caution you that it does. And by the grace of God, We will continue to pour ourselves out for our kids, and we will continue to watch His grace transform them. And when the ethos of our house is more like a watered garden and less like a desert, a place where we want to be and where they want to be, we get to experience all of that glory of being transformed into the image of Christ together. Thank you. You can take questions. Okay?
We do. We'd love to repeat the questions for them, and we'll just spend some time together.
We have about 20 minutes. I would love to hear questions, comments, any of that would be amazing. And I will stick around for a while afterwards too. If you have books you want me to sign, if you have questions about the book, I'm happy to do any of that or all of that. I was talking to a group of teachers at the Circe Institute recently, and I said, I think I read like 4 of Josh Gibbs' books before I had the courage to go ask him to sign my book. So don't be like that. Just come ask me. I'm happy to do it. Okay, any questions about creating a classical culture at home? The question is related to the formula that truly produces the whole child, which is the school, the family, and the church working together. And the question is, in my experience, have I had any situations where there's been misalignment and how that might affect the student? There is usually quite a bit of that. And I think that's why evenings like tonight are so important. I think that it's important that each of us understands the role that we play, and we try to do our role as to the glory of God with all of our heart. We get into trouble when we try to overstep or abdicate. So I think a lot of the misalignment comes when a family is like, that's the school's problem, and that's the church's problem, and it is not my problem. Or the church tries to become more involved in education, or not involved in education at all, right? Understanding like that where our rules are, and staying in our lane and swimming as fast as we can and doing the very best we can. I think it is very hard and hurtful and harmful to the children when there's that unraveling that happens at home. They're going to become like what they see. So one of the big ideas in thoroughness and charm is that you are what you love, and what you love your students will love, and what your students love they will become. And so it's very important that our teachers have ordered loves, that they're putting before their students the very best in the Western tradition, and that they are embodying biblical values in front of your students. It's equally as important that you're doing that at home, that you're the kind of family that believes going to a museum is a good use of time, and that cooking something from scratch is actually worth all of the money and the effort and the time. So those are small ways in which families can come alongside the school and build a culture at home that looks like the ethos of the school, right? The school is trying to get students to do things from scratch. Write me a paper from scratch, basically your brain, pen and paper. Write me something from scratch. So cooking a meal at home from scratch reminds them that you take ingredients and you assemble them into something beautiful and delicious just because it's glorious and just because we can. It is. So I don't have a magic solution in terms of like how to make everybody get on the same page. I think it's largely a cultural task, though. I think it's largely a cultural task. And I think the more that as families who are aligned and who are on fire for what is going on at your school, the more you create cultural events that you invite other families to, the faster this spreads. But what I mean by that is that the Lord was always gracious to my husband and me to give us the right idea at the right time for whatever we needed. So if we were going through a stage and we weren't quite sure what to do, somebody would recommend a book, or somebody would recommend a podcast, or we would have a pastor who was willing to talk to us about that. So we need to pray for opportunities to do that. And we have to understand that is a Holy Spirit work. It is the Holy Spirit creating that need in that family, and then creating a hunger in them for the solution to the need. And then for us to be willing to come alongside them and offer a solution, offer some advice, offer something to read, and then letting the Holy Spirit change them. But that's done through relationship, and that's done through culture, right? So if you have a family who doesn't understand that on a school night their children should be in bed before 10, they might not realize they have a problem until they go to somebody else's house and they're talking and they're fellowshipping, and then the parents are like, it's 8:30, it's time for the kids to go to bed. And then they watch another family start the bedtime routine, and they're like, huh, that's interesting. We don't do it like that. You could tell that family all day long. The kindergarten teacher could send 16 emails saying, we really need your students to be in bed on time, well rested for school. But the Holy Spirit opens it up, right? Opens up their eyes when he does. So a lot of that is done culturally. Yeah, the question was, what do I think about AI? Are there any potential benefits? What are some of the dangers? I am pretty much Amish when it comes to AI. But my husband works in technology. So we'll be doing something and he'll be like, you can ask Grok that. And I'm like, who's Grok? My son and daughter-in-law, I went to go visit them in New Hampshire, and my daughter-in-law made me this delicious meal. And I said, this is amazing. Did you get the recipe out of the America's Test Kitchen? She's like, no, I got it from ChatGPT. It was delicious. And how she's been using it is she's been able to just go and say, like, I have 2 tomatoes, a red pepper, potatoes, and heavy cream. What can I make for dinner? And it'll tell her. That's pretty cool. I also, as a English discipline, in the literature English discipline, I also think that there's some value to just getting a couple cookbooks and looking through them. I think there's some value in doing the research yourself. So I think we have, and then the other story I'll tell you is that I work for Dr. Baynard Cowan. He's in his 70s. His dad was a physicist. So he's not afraid of technology, which I think is crazy. And I find it hard to comprehend why he's not afraid of AI. But he basically said, why should we be afraid of something that's designed to help us? That was what he said. Now, maybe he's naive in the sense that it's not really designed to help us. It's being designed to consume us. And I think that's where we need wisdom. So do I think there will be some benefits to it? Yes, I do, right? My husband is trying to slowly, at a pace that doesn't freak me out, show me some of the things that it might be useful for. And I'm trying to be open-minded. One of the projects I'm working on is I'm going through the Cowan archives and finding a bunch of old articles to update so that we can publish them. And I'm pulling them from things that were typed. So I have to scan it, and then I have to clean it up. And my husband's like, AI can help you with that. I'm like, or I could just type it. But I took his advice, and I copied. I had a JPEG, and I copied it, and I pasted it into ChatGPT and I just said, please edit out all of the extra spaces and line breaks. And it did it. It would have taken me 20 to 30 minutes to do what it did quickly. Like, do I think it's valid? I think it's valuable for that sort of a thing. Like, I think that's a perfectly legitimate use. But do I want it? I don't know if I want it doing my research for me. But I do know a lot of people that are using it for that, right? My son, my third son, is very much into investments right now. So he's doing a lot of research on companies and forecasts and earnings and all that stuff. And he's using it to sort of tell him what he needs to read. So it's gathering his research for him, and then he doesn't. He goes and he reads it all. My biggest fear about it is that it will make us dumber rather than being helpful. That's my biggest fear. And so I try to encourage the people in my life who listen to me to just be judicious about that, in the sense that, like, again, back to the norms and nobility idea, like, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should, right? So just being aware of where we cross those lines of, you can use it to do that for you, but at what cost? So then should you? But I think it's going to make us dumber. One thing that I think will be lovely about it for teachers is that for years and years and years, as a grammar school teacher, I was right on that cusp of like 4th to 5th, 6th grade, where the students were outgrowing cursive and they were starting to learn how to type. And mom after mom after mom would email me and be like, why do they have to write in cursive? Why are you taking points off for letter formation? They're just gonna end up typing next year anyways. Now I'm like, jokes on all of us who thought that we could ditch cursive as fast as possible, because now they're in school, all they're gonna be able to do is write. They're going to have to handwrite pretty much everything now. That's the direction the university is heading. That's the direction that most upper schools are heading, as far as I can tell. So, I mean, kind of jokes on us. We thought that their handwriting didn't matter and their penmanship wasn't a big deal, and now it's pretty much going to be the only way that they're going to be able to turn in anything for an academic grade. So, yes.
You had mentioned growing pains. So my question comes down to discipline.
Yeah.
So we have children, obviously.
Congratulations.
One of them has issues with one thing and the other one has issues with the other. So one runs laps and the other one has to sit in the get along shirt when they say ugly words. And now they're really fast running laps. So do you find in your experience having to become more inventive with your discipline as your children get older and used to more things?
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? So, and I also think on some level, it doesn't necessarily mean that don't punish yourself for their disobedience, I guess is what I'm saying at the end of the day. So don't spend all of this time thinking of like some sort of creative way that you're going to punish this one thing. Okay, because that, to me, that's just punishing you then, right? So a lot of the books that I read on child rearing when our kids were very little basically said, you have to make it, well, let me back up. The big idea was that when we're in the spirit of being able and willing to discipline our children, let me think about how he said it. He said basically like you're disqualified when you, I'm gonna butcher it, but what he was basically saying is that like when you're sitting and watching the football game, drinking a beer, and your kid misbehaves in the other room, you don't want to deal with that because you are here, right? So you have to actually stop doing this thing that you want to do to go do that thing that you don't want to do. And so there's always the temptation not to go do that thing. When you're not watching football and drinking a beer, nobody's misbehaving. Like you could have the best discipline moment of your parenthood career, but nobody's misbehaving. You've got no opportunity to do it. So he was saying that's the paradox of parenting, is that usually you have to figure out how to get yourself into a place where you can do the discipline appropriately. And it often requires walking away from the thing that you want to do, or first disciplining yourself in order to deal with the discipline. So first of all, that I think is important to keep in mind. And then secondly, that you have to make it a process that's easy enough for you to implement, that you have fewer excuses to get off the couch, put the beer down, and go deal with the kid, if that makes sense, right? So if you've got this huge elaborate process, you'll be tempted not to follow through with it, and it's going to be hard to get off the couch to go do it. But if it's something that's very easy to implement and it's very routine and everybody knows that this is what happens, it's going to be easier for you, and you're more likely to follow through on it. So for our children, it was pretty much, they were, well, I don't know how many personal stories I need to tell you, but it was just very cut and dry. And the advice we got was like, it should be swift, and it should be painful, and it should be over. Like, it shouldn't drag on and on and on, because again, we're tempted to emotionally manipulate. We're just tempted to emotionally manipulate, like tell them why they hurt our feelings, or why we're so disappointed that they would make that choice, or get in all of these emotions about the behavior, rather than just saying, this is what you did, this is why it was wrong, and this is the consequence. I'm going to administer the consequence, and when the consequence is over, we are back in fellowship, and we are moving on. I think that's a very, very healthy way to discipline your children. Whatever you think this consequence needs to be, but make it clear and swift, and make restoring to fellowship the goal, so that they know, like, I've preached the gospel to you. We both are sinners in need of forgiveness. We have been restored to fellowship. I love you, and I'm not going to hang it. It's not hanging over your head for the rest of the day. I'm not carrying a grudge, even though you broke this thing that was really important to me. Like, I mean, I have stories where my baseball boys they knocked a lamp. They used to literally turn my living room into a baseball diamond, and they knocked over a lamp that was very expensive, that I cared a lot about, and I lost it. I became completely unglued. But that sort of stuff should just be like, you weren't not playing baseball in the house the way you were supposed to, or you were playing baseball in the house and you shouldn't have been. Like, just make it clear, like, this is what happened, here are the consequences, and I care more about our relationship than I do the lamp. Yes, sir. How many children do you have?
2.
Okay. Does she have 2 too? Oh, great, okay.
You used the example earlier in your speech about one has a piano recital and one has volleyball. I guess, is divide and conquer like was that a non-option?
No, yes. No. We used to do that a lot. We used to divide and conquer quite a bit. I guess all I'm saying is that somewhere decisions, like pressure points will come, and you'll have to decide where the money gets spent and who and how the time is going to go. And you guys can divide and conquer all day long, and everybody's fine. In a family of 5, there's no divide and conquer. And it's funny though, because like you're talking about enculturation. There's this family that sits in front of us at church, and they have 6 children, and they have 2 really young ones, and my boys were watching how they were trying to manage the parenting, and my boys were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so simple. All the older kids need to be in the middle. Dad gets one of the young ones. Mom gets one of the young ones. It's man-to-man defense. Like, what is the problem here?" And so, like, it's just funny how like they pick up on that sort of stuff. But yes, in our family, it was pretty much like, at some point it became boys and girls, but there was not much divide and conquer. But I think back to one of the things that's interlaced in your question is the idea of building that family culture around supporting each other and wanting to be on each other's teams. And I think that is also very important. So if everybody gets used to, like, if your son gets used to never having to go watch his sister, and his sister gets used to never having to watch him, then everybody thinks like, the parents exist for me. my schedule dictates how this family runs. And I don't think that's healthy either. So there does need to be some requiring people to go to each other's things, just so that we all build that fellowship. Okay, I think that, the question had to do with whether or not students who tend to think outside the box or might be exceptionally gifted and talented in an area, whether or not they're truly acting as the exception to the rule in a negative way or not. Ish? Okay. That is going to have to do 100% with attitude, right? It's going to have to be with their attitude about that. And their giftedness is truly a gift. And they're going to have to figure out how to use that gift in the service of their community rather than seeing it as a way to power, right? It goes back to that idea about that we're not educating students who can have power over other people, but we're educating students who will do the right thing because it's the right thing, and they should do the right thing. So I think the danger there is that if you raise a student who thinks like, well, I learned this last year, so I don't really have to do this, and then they create discipline issues for the teacher in the classroom, that's not virtuous. There's a way in which they need to learn how to do the work of school alongside their classmates, even if it's an activity that they think is below their ability. So it has to do a lot with just creating a sense of humility, I think, within that student, and understanding how do you use your giftedness in service of others, rather than thinking of it as maybe not the exception to the rule, but as a way of you having power over the classroom, the teacher, the other students. My Sam was exceptionally talented at baseball, and he played for like a small school like this where, he would pitch his heart out. He would be throwing 85-mile-an-hour fastballs in high school, and there was like one catcher on the team who could catch him. And then he basically had to strike out every batter, because if he didn't strike out the batter, the defense wouldn't be able to, it would be bases loaded. So that's hard. That's a hard position to be in, because again, it starts to make you feel as though like you're the team, and it creates a situation where you think less of everybody else because they don't have the same ability you do. And there's just danger in that. And again, it works against the virtue that we're trying to produce, where we're trying to give them that humility and that desire to teach others and to labor alongside other people. And there are ways in which he's going to have to teach himself how to look at things differently and how to approach something differently. If the way that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the curriculum that we bring these students is so deep that he's going to have to, if he's in a situation where he feels like he's not being challenged, he's going to have to find that depth. And there's always that depth available if he's willing to spend the time thinking about the depth rather than the thing that everybody's being asked to do. He might have to look at that thing and go, okay, here are the big ideas, or here are the consequences of this, or here's how you would use this. Like, he's going to have to bring that depth to it. And that, the ingenuity and the self-discipline that will build in him would be amazing. Okay, we have to end on time.
As we wrap up tonight, will you tell us a little bit about what you'll be speaking to the students about in the morning, so we can give a heads up?
Yes. So I'm back tomorrow morning, and I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be using Joshua Gibbs's book, Love What Lasts, and Rachel Jankovic's book, No Time to Be Dumb, as sort of a backbone to my exhortation to the students that although they think they have lots of time to become virtuous adults, you actually don't. And your time and your energy are your two most valuable resources as a teenager, and you need to be stewarding those well because of the impact your choices have on your soul.
Looking forward to that tomorrow. Thank you, Mrs.
Yes,
Gerth.
thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
So, as a father of 5 squirrely goobers, and a headmaster here at the school, I find myself at the crossroads right where your talk is tonight, into a very practical intersection of how does the home support what's happening at the school, making sure that we're not working against each other. So I appreciate the practical nature of tonight's talk. Let me finish up this evening just in the next couple seconds with some loose ends and housekeeping notes. Our next talk for Parent Traditio coming up next month will be right along the question that you asked here about parenting, utilizing the scriptures and training our children. Mr. Gilly will be leading the discussion over Teach Them Diligently. This is the book that we use for parent training, and we'll be using the scriptures themselves, giving practical advice about how to do just that, how to discipline our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, utilizing the scriptures. That will be on November 13th, and all of you are welcome back for that. And then I want to also say, you mentioned tonight about being the kind of family that takes in cultural experiences, has time for museums and things of the sort. This gives me a great segue into the concert that we're having here on December the 12th. So we have a classical quintet that's coming here. This is a free concert. It's a Christmas concert. There's a flute and a harp and strings and cellos, and they're going to be right here on stage. It'll be immediately after school on December the 12th. It doesn't cost you anything. I would love to see our parents throw on a Christmas sweater and come enjoy a beautiful afternoon concert and show your kids that you love things that last, that are beautiful. We want to finish up tonight with a quick word of prayer. I want to thank each of you. Thank you to our speaker for being here this evening. I want to thank those of you that took time out of your evening here in the middle of the week to be here for this conversation tonight. I'm very grateful, and I hope that you've benefited. Let's finish up with a word of prayer tonight, and we'll be dismissed. Father in heaven, thank you for the amazing privilege we have of raising your children, these covenant children that you've entrusted to our care. God, I pray that you would make us faithful stewards, whether in the classroom, around the dining room table at home, at the baseball field, or wherever we find ourselves in the ebb and flow of life. Thank you for our speaker this evening. May you have been glorified in our conversation. Take us from this place in your good peace. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Go in grace.